All right. Well, hello, everybody. We're glad you guys all joined us. This is the Way Around webinar, Braille and Beyond. I'm Michael Doise. I'm here with Neva Fairchild. Hi, Neva. How are you doing today?
Hello, Michael. Great. It's wonderful to be here. I'm glad everybody's here.
Me as well. And we do have Jessica here. She is helping out with the webinar, but me and Neva will be your presenters today. Jessica's a little under the weather, so we will be handling everything today. And, Neva and I have been Braille users for a long time. So, we wanted to share our thoughts about Braille and things like that. Just to let you all know, this webinar will be recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel. And I guess to kind of get things rolling, Neva, do you want to talk about your experience with Braille and how did you learn Braille?
I learned Braille as an adult with the help of a coworker. I was in my 40s and I was working for the state rehabilitation agency in Texas. And I was a VR counselor, which meant I had a 4 drawer file cabinet sitting just to the left of my desk with over 100 case files in it. And when someone would call with a question or with, a topic to discuss, I would need to pull their case file and get it in front of me under my CCTV at the time. Now they're video magnifiers, but back in the 90s, they were just plain old CCTVs. And I had large print labels on my case folders, the Dymo tape, large print labels, black background, white letters, easier for me to see with my photophobia and everything. And if I could get my nose on that label, it worked. But on the bottom drawer, getting my nose on a label was not easy. On the top drawer, I had to stand to be able to do that. On the middle 2 drawers, I had to lean way in from a sitting position. And I was talking to someone about it one day, and they said, if you put Braille labels on your file folders, you could just reach your hand in there and find out, find the file you want. And I thought, what a good idea. So I learned Braille. I learned the alphabet in about 3 evenings. I wasn't fast, but I knew all the characters, and I launched into a project to get Braille labels on all my file folders. And at the time, our receptionist was blind and gave us our phone messages. This was before voicemail at the state of Texas. Thank you very much. And she would give us our voice messages in print, which at the time I would read under my CCTV. And when I finished the 26 characters of the alphabet, my coworker, unbeknownst to me, went to her and said, start giving Neva all of her messages in Braille.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was like
Wow.
getting thrown in the deep end. And it was the
Mm-hmm.
best thing that ever happened to me because by golly, I learned how to read numbers in a big hurry because I needed to call people back. And since then, I've branched out to learning the contracted code, and I am still a very slow reader because obviously, even after 20 plus years of reading Braille, I haven't read enough Braille to get fast like kids who start out reading Braille in preschool. It's still a very important tool in my
Mm-hmm.
toolkit, and I treasure it as a skill.
Right. And so, do you primarily read Braille with like paper? Like, do you ever get Braille books, or just mainly with your technology?
I have gotten Braille books in the past. I invested a lot in twin vision books and seedlings Braille and print books when I started
Mm-hmm.
having grandchildren. Well, actually, before I had grandchildren, I was getting prepared.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, except when they're babies, my grandchildren didn't want to listen to me read a book because I'm just too slow. I can't read fluently like their parents can. Now the only person I can read Braille to is my dog. He'll listen to me, but that's about it. So I did use paper Braille at the beginning for sure, and I got books from the Library of Congress in Braille to practice my reading. I remember getting one of the Little House on the Prairie books early on to just get my fingers on Braille and
Mm-hmm.
and start using it. And of course, I did the labeling of my canisters and that kind of thing with Braille back in the day. And now, unfortunately, because of peripheral neuropathy, my ability to read paper Braille is diminishing dramatically. I have a really hard time distinguishing paper Braille, especially if it's not brand new paper Braille.
Right. That real sharp stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So now I've transitioned to technology. I have a refreshable Braille display. I'll hold it up for the camera. This is the Braille e-reader from the Talking Book program here in Texas. We have the ZoomX. In other states, you might have the HumanWare 20 cell Braille display. So I can read books on this display, and I can also connect it to my iPhone and both input information into my iPhone and read information on my iPhone using Braille.
That's fantastic. So, uh, I am also a Braille reader like Neva, and the difference is I started learning as a child. I was 2.5 years old, and they wanted me to have experience with Braille very early on, and so I started learning as a child and was able to learn the alphabet at a very young age. We kind of stopped because we lost my Braille teacher at the time. She went on to another school. So I didn't get Braille until I was 5. But because I started that early in knowing the alphabet, I was able to pick up very quickly and keep going. So I started learning grade 1 and grade 2 through school. And then I continued to learn Braille throughout school. And when high school came along, I struggled with mathematics, and they said, well, he needs to learn Nimith Braille. And so I learned the Nimith numbers and signs and was able to do math, which was fantastic. I still remember the Nimith code, but don't ask me to do Braille math anymore. I just don't remember it. It's been a long time. Um, I could do math great on a computer, just not in Braille. But I still, once I read a lot of Braille books when I was a child, and then when I went to the Chris Cole Rehabilitation Center, they had a Braille library at the time. So I read many, many books in there. And that was actually where I read the first 4 of the Harry Potter books, was in Braille.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed that experience, just reading those in Braille. And then uh, later on, I listened to them on audio. And that was just, it's a very different experience when you're able to read in actually read the material and then listen to it later, because when you're listening to things, you may be doing other things at the same time, so you miss things. But if you're reading something, you get all of that attention, and your imagination kind of has to fill in the gaps of what you think people sound like and things like that when you're reading a book. So, uh, and I've used Braille on devices. I have a Braille display here. I have the Vario Ultra Braille display that is a 40 cell and looks about like that. It's it has 40 cells. It's a very slim Braille display. They're very expensive Braille displays now because they just updated them. But I wish I had the update with the USB-C charging. But I digress there. They're very good. Having a Braille display is very good for keeping up Braille literacy, and it helps you use your phone. And we'll go into a little bit about how that can work later. But I've continued to use Braille much of my life, and uh, it's interesting because when I pick up a piece of Braille, like if I go to a restaurant and pick up a menu, I always remember my Braille because of how young I started reading it. So it may take me a minute to kind of get my fingers aligned, kind of recalibrate, kind of like some of the note takers have to do now to recalibrate to type type on the screen. But I just when you learn Braille young, uh, then that skill will stick with you. It very much is like riding a bike, although I've never been able to master that. So, what I think we should do now, I would love to know in our audience if folks would like to share. Have you learned Braille, and how did you learn Braille, and when? I think that would be great to hear from you guys. So if you want to raise your hand, and we will recognize you guys to speak.
And that's Alt Y on the computer, the PC.
Yep. You're far away from your microphone now, Neva.
Took my sweater off. I took part of my microphone away and I didn't realize it. I apologize. Now I'm back.
So Alt
That's
Y, you said?
Alt Y on the PC. Boy, I'm not good with the Mac. I hope there is somebody here who is, if they are.
Probably Option Y if
It's possible it's Option Y. Sometimes the unmuting is different. But yeah.
And Neva and Michael, we have a really small group here today. So I don't even think we necessarily need to raise hands if people just want to unmute and share
Okay.
their experiences.
Sure,
Okay.
that's totally fine.
Perfect.
So if you'd like to unmute, please do so and let us know.
This is Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Yes. I just want to mention, I just learned Braille. I'm in my 60s and I just learned a few years ago, so I'm real slow at it. But I really enjoy learning it, and I'm interested in, how this app can work with Braille and just the possibilities. So I find it interesting. So that's me.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Hello, this is
Hello.
Barbara, and I've known Braille for decades. I learned it as a child at the School for the Blind in Nebraska. And before I heard all the disparaging comments about how slow and tedious it was, I was already out reading all of that. And so I'm grateful that I didn't get poisoned by all of those who thought that it was a cumbersome and slow system, because it doesn't need to be.
Right. And the more you use it, the faster you'll get. And that's just one of those. Anytime there's any task you're trying to complete, the more you use it, the faster you'll get.
And Michael, this is Jessica. We had one other somebody write in. Esther said that she absolutely loves Braille, and when she was in kindergarten, they had little square blocks with Braille letters, and she couldn't stop reading them because she thought it was so cool. So
Right.
thank you, Esther, for sharing that. And
Yes.
it's always fun to hear how different people learn, and it takes to learn any new skill, but I think Braille in particular, you do have to stick with it. And it's great to hear when people do that. And, I think there's this misnomer out there that people, if you're learning when you're older, that most people don't learn Braille, that if you didn't learn it by the time you graduated high school, you're just a lost case. But we have many people here on the call, Neva and Susan, who that is not true at all.
Right. And, I used to teach at the Chris Cole Center, and we had people of all ages learn Braille. It was always fantastic when you would see people kind of have that light bulb come on in their head when they started learning the alphabet and they can read Braille and they can walk to the room signs and feel where the Braille where they were and be able to get to different rooms based on that. And WayAround can help with that as well, and we'll talk about that later on in this presentation. So,
well, Michael, do you actually want to jump in and start talking about that a little bit now?
Yeah, we can do that.
WayAround.
Yep, we can go ahead and do that. So, WayAround is, as I'm sure many of you guys know, an app you could download on your smartphone. It is a labeling system that you could use around the home and office. And one of the things that you may not know is that it will work with your refreshable Braille display. So as you may be aware, if you have VoiceOver on or TalkBack on and you turn on Braille support, you go into your VoiceOver or TalkBack settings and you pair your Braille display with your device, How that works will vary based on iPhone and Android, so just keep that in mind. But once you pair that device, then your spoken feedback that you get with your screen reader will also be in Braille. So this will allow you to use Braille with WayAround. So one of the neatest things, and I don't know, Neva, if you've thought about this, but you can even have kind of go phone free and have, put your phone in one room, leave the app open, and have the Waylink and a Braille display and just start reading your tags.
Yes, and you don't have to have voiceover on. I know many, many Braille users who, when they connect it with their phone, they turn their speech off and they control their phone completely with their Braille display.
Right. The screen reader has to be on, voiceover has to be on, but the speech can be off.
That's right.
And so even in a meeting, you can have your Braille display on and not, worry about other people hearing your notes or what you're working on or reading,
Yes, you can be checking your email just like all of the other people at the table are doing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Michael, I think I alluded earlier to labeling my canisters with Braille when I first learned Braille. And the labels that have endured are still there. I have not removed them, okay? But let's face it, with WayAround, you can put a lot more information on a WayAround tag than you can fit on a Braille label. Canisters have lots of room to put a Braille label, but not more than a couple, 3 words, unless you're just going to cover the whole canister with it.
And you'd have to have multiple lines of tape.
Exactly. But let's say a spice bottle, okay? You cannot get all the words you want on a spice bottle in Braille, but you can on a WayAround tag, and then you can read it in Braille with your refreshable Braille display.
Exactly. And Neva, is this something that you do at home? Do you have any of your spices or things labeled that you use a Braille display to read? Is that
all of my spices are labeled in Braille. I'm sorry, in WayAround. But I typically don't bring my Braille display in the kitchen because I'm
that can have other problems.
I'm scared of making a big mess. Okay?
Right.
But it really wouldn't be a problem to have it, on the kitchen table and then bring the spice basket to the kitchen table and check. I just don't typically do that, but I certainly could.
Right.
Especially because I put more on my spice bottles than just the name of the spice on the WayAround tag. I put amounts that I use in different recipes. For example, once I decide that 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning is right for my meatloaf, I put that on the WayAround tag because it may be months before I make meatloaf again, much to my husband's disappointment. And I'm not going to remember, that last meatloaf tasted pretty good. How much Italian did I put in it? I don't know.
Right.
I better write it down. So I've learned to do that.
And it's very useful to be able to do this. I mean, okay, here's another scenario. Imagine you're cooking for a big group of people and you do have your expiration dates and you have multiple of the same seasoning. You may not want everybody in your kitchen to know, oh, I need to throw away that seasoning because it's been expired for a year. There's some privacy implications that Braille allows you to have that a screen reader does not. So, reading your WayAround tags and keeping it private to you is also a very important factor there that most people don't think about. Because
that's very true for medications too, Michael.
Right, exactly. You could if say you don't want family members knowing what you're taking or you're around friends and you want to keep that information private to you. A Braille display will allow you to do that with WayAround, so you can label items and nobody knows what, unless they come up and read your Braille display, which is, a little bit, if you're standing there, it's like, you don't need to be over here.
It's a little intrusive, isn't it?
Right, intrusive, yeah. That's the word I was looking for. And so it does allow for multiple use cases there. But another thing that and I know we have users that use it for this, is for our deafblind users, right? A Braille display is essential if you have hearing loss. And that allows anybody with hearing loss to use a WayAround to label anything in their home or office and be able to feel what they've labeled, because they may have difficulties understanding the screen reader.
Absolutely. And you may be in a noisy environment. You may be a text enlargement user or inverted color user as well as a Braille reader, but in certain lighting conditions, seeing your phone screen may not be all that possible. So
Right.
using WayAround with a Braille display can open up avenues that you may not have thought of or explored over standard Dymo tape Braille labels, which I don't know about the rest of you. I think the quality of those Dymo tape labelers has diminished over the years.
See, I haven't used those in ages, so I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, the plastic ones, they just don't make pretty Braille. That's all I got to say.
Right. And those labelers, not just the tape, but the labelers themselves change and things like that. So,
Yep.
um,
I love using the Braille input on creating new WayAround tags or editing and updating WayAround tags.
that's a good point.
Yeah, because dictating into your iPhone, I bet every one of us on this call, if you've ever used dictation on a smartphone, you know how inaccurate it can be. And then going back and editing letter by letter or word by word can be tedious. So I prefer to connect to my Braille display whenever I'm creating or editing a tag.
And there are devices that say you don't want to be reading Braille, or you have difficulties in reading refreshable Braille. There are two devices out there that I know of, and Neva, let me know if I'm missing any. The Orbit Writer and the Hable One that let you just do Braille input.
And I'm holding up my Orbit Writer, which is what I used before I got my refreshable Braille display from the Library of Congress, so that I have a Braille keyboard and a refreshable Braille display in one. I just use this for Braille input. And it's about the size of a Hershey bar. Honestly, it's so lightweight, it's like a feather. And it has a Perkins Braille keyboard on it and arrows to move up and down, so I can actually make some navigation moves on my phone to move from edit field to edit field. It's a very handy little device. I haven't seen the Hable, did you say it's pronounced?
Hable One.
Hable One.
It's like Able with an H.
Okay. I don't know why I thought it was Haybolt. How funny. I haven't seen that in person, but the Orbit Writer is just tiny, and I love it because it can go with me in my purse and not be as heavy as a full Braille display.
Right. I've seen the Orbit Reader, but I've never worked with the Writer. So they're all fantastic devices, and so it does allow you to have Braille input and most displays allow you to have input and output. Even the display that I showed, the Vario Ultra, has a Braille keyboard, although the finger placements are a little strange on that Braille display. But all of them have typically 8-dot Braille input, so you can type whatever you need, and you can use that to create your labels with WayAround. And that just doesn't include typing, everyone. It includes the ability to navigate. So it can do the equivalent of flicking and tapping or double tapping, so that you can do everything you need with that Braille display.
Yeah, I love the ease of navigating through the WayAround tag with my Braille display or my Orbit Writer, because I just put my phone to the side. And as you noted earlier, you can turn speech off if I'm doing this in an environment where I don't want other people to know what I'm labeling, or I don't want to disturb other people around me with my telephone yammering away in the background.
Right.
I think the
So,
fact that we can expand what we put on, if we want something labeled in Braille and we use WayAround, we can expand the amount of Braille we can fit about any
right.
item from a few words, maybe a dozen characters max, to unlimited information. That to me is the power of Braille and WayAround.
Right, and we have one of our other customers, Isabel, wrote in and said to us that she's starting the process of learning Braille. She doesn't have a lot of Braille labels, but she's still reading, getting used to it and things like that. But she's still learning, and this is an example of how WayAround can be a great tool for learning Braille. Because if you can use the app and you have a bunch of tags already written, then you're able to use that, hear what you've written with the screen reader, and then read what that is in Braille and learn that way. Neva, did you ever, when you were learning Braille, did you have kind of that reinforced where you could hear or see what was written and then kind of feel the same in Braille, or did you just jump right into the Braille?
I jumped right into the Braille, but I have experienced that. And especially with contractions that I don't run across very often, it's very helpful. Is that an ANCE or an ENCE? You know, those contractions that as a newbie I'm not real good at, and I will admit it to anybody. The thing I love about the Braille displays that at least all the ones I've seen, including the ones from the Talking Book programs that are available in all 50 states, if I didn't mention that before, each state got a particular kind, and there's two kinds across the US, the HumanWare or the ZoomX, but you can set up that any Braille display to only display in uncontracted Braille or grade 1 Braille, which means letter for letter, no contractions, just a character for a character for a character. And then as you build your confidence with contracted Braille, with learning enough contractions to feel like, okay, I can dive into this and see if I can read, then that's when I think the speech enhancement left on the phone would be very helpful, because you might come across a word, you're like, I don't know what that is.
And
Sometimes I can
do,
figure it out with context, and sometimes I can't.
right. And I do believe, in my educational opinion, it's best to learn uncontracted Braille first, because we have seen instances where blind children just learn the contracted Braille and they have difficulties with spelling.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've heard that
And
over the years. I don't know anybody who's teaching that way anymore, but I think that has been a problem in the past. You're right.
so it is good to learn Braille, I believe, all of grade 1, learn how to make words, and then improve that with a grade 2. And we've mentioned earlier Braille on signs, and we've talked at other webinars and things about our WayAround for public spaces, but that is one thing that can be used as well. If you scan a sign with one of our Way signs, you can read the Braille as well on the Way sign. So there are so many ways to use WayAround with Braille, and I think it would be a good time. Do you guys have any questions about what we've talked about so far?
This is Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
I have a comment about the learning Braille. As a child, when I learned Braille, whenever we had our spelling tests, in order to get the word counted right, we had to get it correctly written, both in contracted and uncontracted Braille.
That's
So
fantastic.
I don't think we necessarily need to have people learn it, the uncontracted first. What I do think is important is to have teaching methods where, when you learn something, if you are learning it incorporating contractions, that the words that are used in the book that is being taught from, that's not very good grammar, but anyway, that the only contractions that are used are the ones that are already known, but you don't have a situation where you would have a word being written with a contraction that wouldn't appear in that word once you know the whole system.
Correct.
In other words, you wouldn't have somebody learn the TH sign and the ER sign that could be used in the word other. You wouldn't have it spelled like that or written like that. You would not have that word appear in the book until the person had already learned the THE sign, which would be the correct way to write that word, OTHE sign R. So there are things like that I think have to do with the learning and teaching of Braille. The thing I was wanting to ask about, you talked about how we can with way tags, and I haven't really thought to use my Braille display with way tags, which is kind of a narrow thing that I haven't done. I mean, it's kind of interesting to me to think, well, yeah, I could have been doing that. When you're going through the fields, do you do those? Are the fields like pages, or are they like lines, or how do they show up?
So are you talking about like when you add a description and then you add a detail, a new template, as we call them now, a
Yes.
new template? So it's just they're not new pages. It will just show up, as you're browsing your phone. It's going to show in Braille exactly what's going to be spoken if voiceover or talkback was on.
So if you're navigating, what keystroke do you use to go from one field to the other?
So that's going to be based on your Braille display. So
Okay.
whichever one is basically to flick right or to go to the next item is going to be the key that you'll use on your Braille display to go to the next item. It's basically just the exact same as using the app. You just have certain keys on your Braille display to move to the next and previous item.
Okay, so it would be like going to the next line or the previous line or whatever. And you would do that same thing with the orbit writer, I'm assuming.
That's correct. And the keystrokes like top of page, bottom of page also work. So if I want to jump down to the create button or the read button, I don't have to next line, next line, next line with my display. I can just hit the keystroke on my display that makes me jump to the bottom of the screen.
Very cool. Thank you.
Essentially kind of like working with a web page. If you were navigating down a web page with your Braille display and not using gestures, the WayAround app would function in very much the same way. And what you would do to activate a template is what you would do to activate a link, etc.
Okay, thank you very much.
I do want to say that I think that using WayAround and labels and a Braille display when you are learning Braille does the thing that is most important when you are learning Braille, and that is to get Braille under your fingers as often as possible and as much as possible.
Yay.
And that's like, labeling your world, but why not, right? Why not have all that information available to you?
This is Susan, and I think it's just really cool. The examples that you guys are giving where you can jump back and forth, Braille display, WayAround. And since I'm kind of new at learning Braille, I can check through WayAround if I wrote it down in WayAround, and then I can check in Braille, and it's just really cool how that works. A good way of checking.
Another thing that's really neat, I don't know if you guys have thought of this, but you could put a sticker on a file folder and then put a Braille label over the file folder so you could get a very small amount of information in Braille and then get detailed information by scanning the tag underneath that Braille label.
Oh, that's true.
I do that with my remote control in the den to our family television, which I watch so seldom that I can never remember which button is which on the remote control. So I have one button marked tactily, not in Braille because it's just a single dot, but that's the power button. So I can turn the doggone thing on. But then on the back, I have a WayAround tag that I can scan. And then the way I prefer to do it is with my refreshable Braille display to move through the different buttons and their function and the description of their location on the other side, because then I can have my remote in my hand and just be moving forward with my Braille display, not gesturing with my phone.
Yeah, so do we have any other questions about things so far? And feel free to just unmute if you guys have any questions as we're going through. You know, I really like the idea of using the Braille labels in conjunction, like we talked about, with the stickers and things like that. And it's something I've not thought about doing that until, believe it or not, we've been talking about this. And you know, we would love to hear your ideas of what you use Braille for. So during the webinar or afterwards, we always welcome that, because you guys as customers and users of the system help give us inspiration to tell other customers, and that's what's fantastic. So we've talked about input. We've talked about the ways to read Braille that you put on way tags. Neva, do you think that the stickers are the best way to work with the Braille labels, or would there be any other types of tags that you think would go well with, using Braille labels?
To combine Braille labels, I think probably you're going to be on a surface that is going to be flat and something that you can adhere to. So I think stickers are probably the first option, but you don't have to limit using WayAround and Braille to stickers unless you want to add an additional Braille label to, for quick,
Right.
This is my cinnamon, So, in my closet, I particularly like using the WayAround with my WayLink, because I don't have to hit the read button on my phone each time I want to look at the next garment. And I have a neck strap for my Braille display, so I can hang it around my neck and then keep my fingers of my left hand, which does happen to be my Braille reading hand, and then in my right hand I have my WayLink, and I'm feeling for the edge where I put my buttons, and I just get the WayLink, even close to it. I pull it out so I'm sure this is the garment I'm reading a little bit, because if I'm not holding it carefully, I can get two garments in my hand at the same time. And then just I'm scanning my Braille display, because the first thing that pops up is that first description. And that usually answers my question of, is this the blouse I want or the skirt I want? And then once I get the one I want, I can navigate down the tag to make sure that what I'm putting it with matches, and or I have to tell you that when I first saw purchase date on one of the clothing template fields, I thought, how silly is that? I don't know when I purchased this, that, or the other. But I very soon realized that if I am creating a new tag for something I just bought, it's simple to put the purchase date. And then if I refer to the purchase date when I haven't worn something for a while, it gives me a heads up, gee, maybe I better get somebody to look at this, to make sure it hasn't faded and that it still looks nice. So if that's something I haven't worn for a while, I may navigate down to that purchase date and make sure this is, not 5 years old, and say, oh, maybe somebody better better look at this before I wear it in public.
Right.
Sometimes the information on the way tag is not just for immediate identification. Sometimes it's that kind of useful detail that makes a difference for me. And I would be willing to bet that nobody I know who's sighted, who can look through their closet and grab their green jacket when they want it, ever even thought about knowing the purchase date. But for me, it's something very helpful because it gives me a heads up to check into it.
And you know,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I have a comment too. I'd like to make a comment about this because
Having a little trouble hearing you. Can you get a little closer to your microphone maybe, or in line with it better?
how's this?
We still are not able to hear
Still
you.
pretty distant.
I know it's this Bluetooth speaker. That's
We'll give it a try and we'll see if we can interpret. Okay, we'll come back and try again in a few minutes.
So one of the things that I think that I wanted to speak about as well is with the app, you know, we said Braille and Beyond at the beginning of this. And the reason why we are saying Beyond is you can use the WayAround app to supplement Braille to use
All right.
with you.
Oh, there
Sorry
you
to-
are.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt. The reason I use a Bluetooth speaker is to try to reinforce the audio. Anyway, one of the issues that I know that has been a problem in the past is how to label clothing with enough detail so that you know what it is. And with just about every Braille method I've seen, either it's going to go through the wash and it won't last, or you have to put so much information on a small card that you have to do a lot of abbreviating. And so I think this idea of WayAround is just so brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll get the sound system back on. Thanks.
Sure thing. So, you know, Braille and Beyond, Braille is always a great tool, and we encourage everybody to learn it, use it, and make it a part of your lifestyle. But there are times where, as we get older, as things change, we may not be able to read Braille like we've used to be able to do. And that is where WayAround can help. And so if you're able to hear your phone with your screen reader, you could continue to read labels. So if you're at a building that has way signs, you're able to read that sign. You could still determine that that is the men's restroom. You can determine that's the women's restroom. And at home, you could still have your items labeled. You can have your file folders. And so we work to make sure that people can use Braille with our app, but also that if you have neuropathy, if you have less feeling in your fingers and you have trouble reading Braille, then you are able to use WayAround to get the same information. Neva, you mentioned about having partial neuropathy in your hands. Is that correct?
Yes, I've had it in my feet for 30-something years, but in the last few years, my hands have started to be affected as well.
So do you find that, does it tire your hands to read a lot of Braille, or is it...
No, it isn't tiring at all. What it requires for me now to effectively read Braille is a refreshable Braille display.
Right.
Yeah.
So are there times where you may not always have your refreshable Braille display, or do you always have that available?
That's getting less often because I'm finding I need it more and more. But it doesn't help in elevators where the Braille is hard to read with my fingers, and it doesn't help on office signs where the doctor's office, has their suite number or whatever. Sometimes that Braille is okay, and sometimes it's just awful,
So,
as we all know who are Braille readers, sometimes the Braille is just awful.
And so that's how WayAround can help. If we have way signs at these locations, then anybody could get that spoken feedback that they are where they think and want to be. Right. So that is why it's Beyond, because we want people to use Braille, but we also want to make sure people have all of the possible ways of getting the information they need when they can get it. And so that's why WayAround has, the NFC tags. It's, there's a lot of ways to make sure that you are near where you want to be, but with the NFC tags, you're where you want to be when you scan that tag.
Absolutely. And you get lots more information than they could ever fit in Braille on a sign
Right.
if you have a way tag.
Right. And that's, you could also do that at your home as well. Like we've talked about, you could do some things on a Braille label, but there's only certain things that you could do on that Braille label. And so you could take that beyond just the Braille that you could put on that tag, on that envelope with a way tag in your Braille display. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is we have another customer that wrote into us and said that they learned Braille from the Hadley School for the Blind, and they learned uncontracted Braille, and they've started using Braille more and more, through their technology and with their iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch, and they've started to continue to learn it. And that's what we really want to promote. With customers like Esther, Linda, and Isabel who've written into us, we want to hear these stories. We want to hear your stories, how you've used Braille, and we want to know how you've used it with WayAround to improve your life and things like that. And I guess with the time we have left, Neva, do you have any final comments? And then we'll open it up for questions for the end.
I think I would just like to say that I am so gratified that people both learn Braille later in life, are enjoying it, and people like yourself and others in the audience who learned Braille as a child and still use Braille in their world. I hope we can expand how you use Braille by adding WayAround with a refreshable Braille to what you use.
For sure. And I personally want to really thank everybody and Neva for some great conversations about this during this webinar, because I think when we could talk to each other and really discuss how we use these things and can better our understanding of how WayAround can be used in our daily lives as blind individuals and users of this software. We work at WayAround, we help develop it, sell it, make sure that it works great, test it, but we also are users of WayAround. And I think that's what makes this product so special, is we're all users along with, working with the product. And, we get to see what we could come up with, but what we come up with is so small compared to what everybody else out there finds ways of using WayAround for. And so any way that you guys can find to use WayAround with Braille and to promote Braille literacy and education with WayAround is always a plus for WayAround, but also the community, the blindness community, and everybody at large. So I think we're all passionate about seeing what is possible. We always, say with WayAround, you can put as little or as much information on a tag as you could dream of putting. So, you can use your imagination to take the tools provided and make them into something that nobody's ever thought of before. And so we love to hear your stories. So again, I want to open it up for any questions you guys might have or suggestions or things like that.
While you're unmuting, I'll just say that the easiest way to reach us is connect@wayaround.com. The word connect, CONNECT, at WayAround, all one word, WAYAROUND.com. You can also find that email address in the settings of your WayAround app. So if you can't remember it, don't worry. It's in the settings, and that's how you can reach us easily.
And I will add, there's something else cool in the settings. There is an experience WayAround item that you can select. and it lets you experience several of the venues that we have tagged with our public way sites, as with our signs. And it's really a cool way to experience WayAround. I still go through there and just kind of, because it's kind of like a postcard, right? You could kind of see what WayAround has done, where we've been, and things like that. And so, I suggest that you guys all try that and see how it looks in Braille as well.
Could you repeat that? What did you just say? It's down where?
So if you go into the settings page in
Okay.
WayAround and then find Experience WayAround and double tap,
Okay,
that will
great.
it will act like it's scanning a tag, but it's a virtual tag basically, and it brings up a list of conferences and events that we have tagged and put signs at, and it's just a very neat way to experience what WayAround has done before.
This is
There's a-
Susan. I'm going to leave. This has been excellent. Thank you so much. And you guys have a great day.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
being here,
joining
Susan.
us.
Bye-bye.
Where do you find that conference tag?
So if you go to the settings page in WayAround, and then go through all the settings, I believe it's past the help center, if I remember right, and it'll say Experience WayAround, and double
Awesome.
tap.
That's great. That's great. Sounds like that would be a good demo tag for people that haven't seen the app.
Right. That's why we put it there, actually.
Oh, so brilliant.
So I don't remember if it's before or after the help center, but I know it's in that list of resources that we've put in the app, in the settings page.
Any questions?
All right. Well,
Cynthia Johnson has raised her hand, Mike.
okay, Cynthia, if you want to unmute, you can do so. It still shows that you're muted.
If you're on a PC, it's Alt plus the letter A to unmute.
And I just sent a request to ask to unmute.
Okay, so now you need to find the whatever OK button to accept that request to unmute. And if you're on a computer, that's tabbing around. If you're on a device, it's swiping left and right till you find the request. Any luck, Cynthia?
Looks like she's still muted.
Well, I'm sorry, Cynthia. If you would, send us an email with your question or your comment. We'd still love to hear from you.
For sure. All right. Do we have any further questions before we wrap this up today? All right. I would like to say thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Neva and Jessica, for helping us. Jessica for hosting and facilitating and helping out with the chat and everything, and Neva for lending your expertise. This has been a fantastic webinar, and we will be back next month with another WayAround webinar, so stay tuned for more information about that. Jessica, do you have anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, thank you so much for hosting today, Michael and Neva. And we will post this on our YouTube channel once it gets processed and everything. So if you want to go back or share it with anybody, definitely check out the YouTube channel. We'll send a link via email. And if you're part of a local group or chapter or organization and you would want us to come talk to your group, please send us an email and let us know. We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you for being here, everyone.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.